And again, I think that is kind of the beauty of insurance with small businesses. When you're really limited with cash, insurance, it becomes even more important.
I'm Shawn Hessinger, and this is Small Biz in 15, the show where we bring you small business news and tips to make your small business better. Today, Alon Shiran, Vice President of Product and Design at Next Insurance, explains what kinds of insurance your business might need and why. Okay, Alon, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Next Insurance and what you guys do?
Sure. So I've been with Next for about 1.5 years now. I lead all product development and our UX designers at Next. Next is a company that was founded around 2016 with a mission to help small businesses thrive by providing them really a one-stop shop for their insurance needs. And we're a technology-led full-stack insurance provider. So we're really taking on the entire value chain. That includes writing the policies. We are the carrier, handling claims, pricing, servicing, underwriting, everything. We're really focused around technology and specifically solving small businesses' needs.
That brings up an interesting point that I wanted to mention first, which is really small businesses. What's the difference between their needs and larger businesses? This sounds like a real niche. So what is the difference?
Right. So I would say the difference is probably where the biggest difference is where they are in their life cycle. So many of our customers are they're new in business. This is maybe the first time that this business owner is starting a business, and they're unfamiliar with their needs. So I would say that's kind of one of the problems they're facing, and that we want to solve for them is to make it as easy, as simple for them. The second thing is usually their needs are more specific and smaller. So for example, they're more likely to have one location, or they're more likely to have one car or just a few employees. So really the coverages that are right for them are very different than a larger chain, for example.
Well, I mean, I know this from starting my own small business, and I'm sure a lot of people know this from starting small businesses out there. You start a small business, all the things you're concerned about is, bringing in revenue, being able to pay your employees and all this other stuff. And probably the last thing on your mind is insurance. And you probably also think to yourself, well, I don't know what kind of insurance I need at this point. Why does a really small business need insurance? I mean, what kinds of insurance do they need?
Right. Great question. So maybe I'll start with the kinds of insurance, and that kind of will naturally lead into why a small business would want something like that or need it. So there are a few different types of business insurance. The most common one is general liability, sometimes also called business liability. And that protects businesses from whether they cause damage to a third-party property, or if, for example, there's bodily injury in their own business. So, for example, if you're a plumber and you go to your client's house and you accidentally hit their window with the ladder and things like that, that will protect you.
Right.
So that's one that is very common. It also covers things like if you're a restaurant owner and you sell liquor, then what you would want is a general liability that has a liquor coverage. So if you, for example, sell liquor to someone that later goes on and drives drunk and has an accident, that will protect you in case of a lawsuit against you. So that's general liability, for example. Another very popular one is worker compensation. And that protects your employees from if they get injured. So workers' compensation will pay you or cover any healthcare costs, but also damages to the struggle that you're having to continue to work, so lost wages. In most cases, that is required by law. So an employer must have workers' compensation if they have employees. So really, there's a mix of the law that you need to have that, and two is protecting yourself and protecting your business. But those were two examples of kind of the more common insurance types for small businesses.
So when we talk about liability insurance and why we need it, you mentioned two specific examples, but let's think of a business like, I don't know. Can you think of some other, let's talk about the breadth of liability insurance, because there's some things that probably people aren't thinking of,
right,
that liability insurance could cover.
Right. So we talked a little bit about business liability, and I would say that you can categorize businesses in many ways, but one common way is whether they have a physical location or is it, Joe the plumber going to someone's house and fixing stuff. And general liability will cover different things there. So again, if you're in a restaurant, we talked about liquor. But another thing that general liability could cover is if one of your customers slips and gets injured. So that will help cover that. I guess general liability is very popular because it is so broad and it covers you for these really different things like another person's property and damage and losses. But yeah, also if one of your customers gets hurt, so that will cover that. There's another type of liability that I didn't mention, which is professional liability. And professional liability is very popular or very in demand in the more professional services. So like tax accountants and lawyers and things like that. And that covers you from mistakes that maybe you had in your profession. So for example, if my accountant messes up with taxes and I get a penalty, if I decide to sue them or anything like that, then they would be covered if they have professional liability. And so that's another type of liability that really depends on the small business type, like you said, and there are like maybe 1,000 different categories of small businesses.
You said if you have employees, you need workers' compensation.
Right.
Are there aspects of that businesses might not, especially small ones, might not think about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I mentioned, it can cover many things. Obviously, the most trivial and the one that jumps to mind to most businesses when you ask them what do they think workers' compensation covers is medical expenses. But it also covers lost wages, survivor benefits, permanent injuries, and employee liability and things like that. So if, let's say you are on a construction site and if one of your workers hits their foot because a beam fell, that's something that happens a lot. They have some sort of injury to their leg. With that insurance, they would be covered for the lost wages because of that injury. And with small businesses, we often know that they don't have a ton of cash lying around, right? So this really can save a business. Besides that, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important for businesses to know that workers' compensation in almost all states is required by the law.
I also noticed on your website the business owner's policy. Mm-hmm. What is that, and who needs it or benefits from it? What does it do?
Yeah, so business owner policy, or we sometimes call it BOP. That's kind of the name in the industry. It's basically two insurances that are bundled into one. It is the general liability that we talked about, but it also has commercial property insurance. And commercial property covers your property, but not only the property, it covers what's inside it. And I think many businesses don't realize that. And they think that because they're renting a place, that commercial property won't help them. But again, let's go back to a restaurant case. All the equipment inside your kitchen that is often hundreds of thousands of dollars, that is covered by commercial property. So if you have a fire in the kitchen or things like that, or there's some weather event and all your tables or whatever are kind of destroyed, this thing covers you. And again, I think that is kind of the beauty of insurance with small businesses. When you are really limited with cash, insurance, it becomes even more important.
Let me ask you about another one that seems, on the face of it, a little more specific, which is commercial auto policies. Mm-hmm. What kinds of businesses need this? Is it broader than people might at first think?
Yes. So commercial auto, any business that drives or has either a driver, or even if the business owner is driving a car as part of their business, commercial auto is the insurance that they would need. It is actually in many states required again by the state by law to cover it. And things that would be covered are obviously accidents to you or your employees, bodily injuries, but also to your auto itself. So I would say the most common businesses that we see purchase these are contractors, plumbers, realtors, the businesses that you would imagine drive around and are less stationary. We also see that a lot with the delivery. So food delivery is big, especially since COVID, right? And we get a lot of things delivered to our house. So we see that also, of course, uptick during these times. There are two other insurances that are pretty popular. One is umbrella. That actually today, we announced that we're launching umbrella or excess liability in 41 states. And what umbrella is or excess liability, it basically sits on top of your general liability, but extends the coverage limits to $1 million or $2 million. So that's something that we see many businesses also buy. And usually they will buy that because there's a third party that is asking them to buy it. So maybe I'm a subcontractor working for a general contractor and they're going to ask me to do that. Or I'm leasing a space or whatever. And the real estate agent is asking me to show a proof of insurance for that. So there's some cases for umbrella excess liability. The other one is tools and equipment, which is sometimes called inland marine. But this is also a very popular one for the home services or construction classes. And this insurance, what it covers is basically if you're driving around with your truck and there's a lot of expensive equipment in there, that will cover the equipment. And many businesses we see purchase that when, electricians and plumbers and those categories, that's really I would say a basic insurance for them to have. So one thing that's, I would say pretty special about the small business insurance industry in the US, it's very fragmented. There is no clear leader. And we see that as really a good signal that there's no one yet that has solved this in a really complete and best way. And we think that we have the opportunity to go and solve that problem for small businesses. And we want to do that with being obsessed and really focused on small businesses and solving their problem with technology. So I can provide some examples of how we do that. We can split it. Just an easy way to understand it is kind of the purchasing experience and then post-purchase. So we use a lot of AI and machine learning capabilities and access to digital data sources in order to provide a really good experience in the purchasing experience and to provide an accurate quote. We really want a tailored insurance recommendation for the business so they're not underinsured, but also not overinsured and just spending a lot of money on something they don't really need.
Right.
So we do that again with third-party data sources and AI. And what that also lets us do is sell insurance instantly. So what we see in the industry is almost all the policies that are purchased go through an agent. Because we are a technology-led company and digital experience, we have three channels. We have agent channel that we're investing a lot in, and we view agents also as our customers. But we also have our direct channel, which is basically you sitting in your living room whenever it's comfortable for you and kind of checking out what insurance do I need, and you can buy it on the spot without talking to anybody, and in a minute you would be insured. And the third one is what we call embedded insurance or partners. So we partner with a lot of the SaaS products that small businesses run their business on, whether it's Intuit QuickBooks or Gusto or whatever. Because we are a digital underwriter and carrier, we can basically partner with these technology products and get a lot of information in sync from them. So for example, let's say you have workers' compensation on one of these platforms. As a small business, you are required to update your insurance about any changes in employees and employee salaries and what they do. But because we are integrated with the software that you run payroll on, we can do that automatically for you and save time.
Well, that's it for another episode of Small Biz in 15. Thanks again to Alon Shiran of Next Insurance for making this show possible. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the show, and please leave a comment and let us know what topics you'd like to see covered in future programs. For more small business news and tips, join us at smallbiztrends.com.